Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I thought I would share my top 10 and bottom 10 eyeshadow palettes of the year. I tried so many new palettes and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. I already did my best of 2022 makeup and I thought I would do a palettes video separate. I thought about ranking my palettes, but I feel like those are just so hard to do because a lot of times the palettes in the middle, they're just like so comparable and it's hard to put them at like a ranking spot. So I thought we would just kind of share my top 10 and my worst 10 palettes this year. I will say I have tried some great palettes this year, and honestly it's not very often where I come across a really bad palette. These palettes just might not be my personal preference, or there was just something I really didn't care for about them. So I'm not necessarily saying they're bad quality, but they just were not my favorite of the year. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and do my top 10 first. So these aren't really in any particular order, I'm just kind of grabbing. So Patrick Ta released his second eyeshadow palette this year and I absolutely love his first one, so I had a feeling this one would be a huge hit as well. This is the Major Dimension eyeshadow palette volume 2. So volume 1 is also a neutral palette. It has a mix of warm and cool tones. He always does a shimmer row on top, a matte row on the bottom, and then 2 cream shadows. So he does have kind of a more unique layout, which I think is really fun. So this year he made more of like these pinky rosy tones, which were honestly just so beautiful. It can pull like super orangey though on some. I can create some more pinky looks as well, but I don't know, something about his formula is just, it's one of my favorites. His mattes are really pigmented and blendable, and the shimmers are so metallic. They have a little bit of a glittery shine to them. They're just so stunning on the eyes. A couple of them come off a little bit like toppers, but they really are stunning. Like every time I wear this, for sure it's guaranteed a compliment. And then the creams are actually really easy to work with as well. I reached in for them and laying them down as like a base, so I work with them in my crease. You can put them all over the lid. Then I'll go ahead and mix like my powder on top of it and it blends perfectly fine. No skipping, no tugging. So I really like his palettes. I know they are pricey, but he honestly really does have one of my favorite formulas on the market. And I think this one's maybe even better than the first one. I like the first one's color story more, but I think the formula is just like tip top in the Major Dimension 2. Next we have Adept Cosmetics with Heather Austin. This is a collab palette. So Heather is another YouTuber on here and she helped make this stunning palette. So Adept is more indie brand, and indie makeup brands, honestly, their quality is just next level. Compared to a lot of the mainstream brands that you can get at Sephora and Ulta, indie just knows how to do shimmers and mattes like so well. They create amazing pigmented eyeshadows, and Adept is so good with their shimmers and glitters and multi-chrome shades. They're just so unique. So I absolutely loved this one. I thought that the shades that Heather picked were super fun. I love that this one is more of a mix of mattes and shimmers. It's more shimmer heavy, but I also had 4 mattes in here to create full looks, which I thought was awesome because usually Adept does not put very many mattes in their palettes. It's very shimmer heavy, but for me, I love a palette that I can get a full look with, and I don't do a lot of full shimmer looks, so this was perfect. I can mix in some of the greens together, create a fun purple look with this matte in here or something more neutral. So there's so much you can do with it, plus you have such unique shades. The shade is So Excited is seriously stunning. The multi-chromes Austin, oh my goodness, they are just out of this world. You will see like the pigmentation, how soft and creamy it is, and when you swatch it, it is so opaque. It looks like you're putting on a liquid eyeshadow. It is amazing. So I've been really into Adept this year, especially Heather's palette was just such a good one. I was also able to try some more Sigma palettes this year, and I really fell in love with the Nomad palette. It is very simple, but this is just my color aesthetics. This is kind of a rosy toned palette as well, rosy pinks. It reminds me a little bit of like Anastasia's Modern Renaissance, but like a fun, more updated version of it. It is so pretty, and I wear this a lot more than I thought I would. I especially love this vintage shade. I wear all the time across the lid. I get so many compliments on this look as well. I love using grunge in the outer corner, but I'm a sucker for a really pretty bronzy eye, kind of like what I have on now, but I love that this one also pulls a little more purple or pinky as well, and there's just so much that you can do with this one. I feel like the shimmers in here are stunning, and Sigma's formula is so easy to work with. I know sometimes with like the more indie shadows, like let's say Adept, they're ultra pigmented, so they can be a little bit hard to work with at times, but this is like beginner friendly but also expert friendly. Like anyone can use this palette. So I've been loving the Sigma Nomad. I also wanted to throw this one in here. This is from Kaleidos. I tried out one of their quads. Of course I don't have the name. The sticker came off of mine, but the smoky quad, oh my goodness. This is one of the best like smoky eyeshadow palettes I have ever used, and it's just so simple because it has 4 shades. And usually with these smoky gray tone colors, they can be hard to work with in the crease and stuff, and blending can be sometimes an issue with these kind of shades. They can get patchy and whatnot, but this was so easy to use. It was ultra pigmented, and of course the metallic color is insane on the eyes. It's like liquid metal. I am obsessed with this. So this has really gotten me into Kaleidos shadows, especially this really fun smoky palette. Again, it's just so easy with only having 4 shades. You don't have to sit and think about what you're gonna do for your look. If you need a smoky eye, just grab this and go. So easy to use. So I've been loving that one. Next we have Pat McGrath. I had to include the Moonlit Seduction. I know this is boring to some, but this is my favorite Pat palette that she's ever done. First of all, I think it's pretty wearable, and there's not a ton of super glittery shades in here. So I'm actually not a huge fan of the Pat McGrath glitters because they don't stay on the eye very well unless you use like a glitter glue, and I don't like to go like that extra step to get what I want from an expensive palette. I want it to perform, and I don't have to like take a lot of extra work to get what I want. So that's why I love this one, and I love this color story as well. Again, it's kind of like those rosy neutrals a little bit, but you can go a little bit more smoky with this one too. It is so stunning. I highly recommend checking this one out. The shimmers are beautiful, and you don't need like a glitter glue with these, but I personally love it. I think it is stunning. Some of her palettes can be a little bit more repetitive, so this one can be in a way similar to the original Divine Rose, but I feel like this one's like a step up from that, and you get a little bit more metallic shades in this. But I think it is beautiful, and it's been on sale. Like Pat McGrath has been having a really good sale lately, and you were able to get this like 40% off. I don't know if it's still going on, so hopefully you guys were able to get this one at a discount, because I definitely recommend waiting for a sale with her stuff, because she always runs a sale. Full price, it's too much, but for the sale price, I think it's for sure worth it. Next up, I had to include the Huda Beauty Empowered palette. A lot of Huda's palettes definitely make it to my favorites. I absolutely love her formula, and typically she tries to do something a little bit different as well in her palettes, and this year she did 2 cream shades that you could use as like eyeliner, which I have tried here and there. And it's pretty. I feel like it doesn't set very well, so you kind of have to set it down with powder. I do prefer, I would say, Patrick Ta's cream shadows over Huda's, but this is such a stunning palette all in all. It can be a little bit similar to her Naughty Nudes, I believe it's called, because that one runs a little bit more kind of deeper chocolate burgundies, and this one kind of has that same tone, but I actually find that this has kind of a half where it's more cooler tones. So you kind of have your warm side, and you kind of have your cool side over here, which is nice, so you can do some fun smoky eye looks. Gorgeous metallics in here as well. Like this gold is so stunning. It's literally like, again, liquid gold flake. It's so pretty. I can't get enough of Huda's shimmers. I think she does such a good job, and I really love this color story. It's very wearable for me. You guys will notice a theme here where a lot of these palettes are more wearable neutral palettes, because that is what I wear on the daily. So these are my most reached for, most used. Love the Empowered palette. Now this one can be a little bit similar to the Huda, and this is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette, but I love both of them for different reasons, and this one was such a fun one. This is my favorite Natasha palette this year. Her other ones this year, I feel like I was a little bit more disappointed in, but this one was definitely right up my alley. I really love that you can go a little bit more warm here. There is some fun purples mixed in. She also included a really fun trio chrome color right here, which I love placing this on the eye with the black shadow. It looks so good. So she's kind of switching up the formulas a little bit, adding more things here and there. So I thought that was really fun. But yeah, I thought the quality of this one was excellent. I personally love Natasha's shadows. They're one of my favorite formula-wise. I find them so easy to work with for me. They give me the pigment I want, the shimmer I want. Just absolutely beautiful. So this one definitely was a huge hit for me this year. Now, I also really loved Nomad's palettes this year. They had some really good ones, but I think my favorite has to be the Whistler Snow Lodge. I thought this was so fun and just really unique. They always come up with seriously the best color schemes, and this one was such a fun one for like winter time. It was based off, I think, a ski lodge in Canada, I believe, and it has this gorgeous like blue kind of color scheme, and it really just reminds me of like the forest, being in the mountains during the winter time. It just nailed the color scheme. So I absolutely loved this one as well. Even though it's not a color scheme I wear daily, I just thought this was so unique. The colors had amazing payoff, and there is some fun shimmers in here. There's even like a little duochrome. I did the most gorgeous blue look with this palette. I still am obsessed with it to this day, so I'll have to do that one again, but love this one from Nomad. Now, Tarte kind of shocked us all this year with this launch, so I had to include it in this video, and this is the Man-Eater After Dark from Tarte. It has been a minute since Tarte had like a really trending palette on YouTube. They're actually a very popular brand. I just feel like they don't get enough hype here on YouTube because they do a lot of the same color story over and over, but this was just something fun and different for the brand, and everyone went crazy for it, and it's great quality. I really do like Tarte's shadows, but they tend to run on the light side, so it was so exciting when they made this palette that actually has some nice depth to it and some fun color. We got this one like early fall, and it seriously was the perfect palette for fall time. It literally looks like the colors of autumn leaves, so I thought it was perfect. I created some gorgeous looks with this one, and yeah, the shimmers are stunning. The mattes performed great, so this one was a huge win for me. It is a bit big, so I feel like it can be a little bit repetitive with the shades. Maybe they could have done a smaller palette. I know they just came out with a mini of this one, which is kind of cool, but personally, I love the big palette this year. Okay, lastly, for my best palettes, I wanted to include my Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette. This was a really nice, just everyday neutral palette that Lunar Beauty came out with, and Lunar Beauty is Manny MUA's brand, and honestly, they have such good quality shadows. This one came with me a lot this year. It's such a good go-to palette, just everyday wearable nude shades, which I love. You have two rows of mattes here, like your lighter mattes, your deeper mattes, and then the middle is all shimmers, and I feel like he has a really similar shimmer formula to Patrick Ta, where it's super metallic and almost glittery like, so it is so shiny on the eyes. This is another kind of big palette, but I feel like every color kind of has its place in this one, and I wear this so much. It is just beautiful. If you guys need just a really nice everyday neutral palette, definitely check this one out. I reach for it so much. So that is my top 10 palettes. Now let me get into the 10 palettes this year that were a little more on the disappointing side. I won't say they're awful, but they definitely did not compare to the other ones I showed you here. So first up, the Urban Decay She-Hulk palette. You guys saw my review on this one. I just think that this one was kind of an epic fail for them. I don't think the color scheme really fit with the whole She-Hulk thing. They really could have done much better with the color scheme. I know that people were saying like, oh, like it's supposed to be like her She-Hulk side and then her normal side. Since her normal side, she's just like an everyday, was she a lawyer? I think I've watched the show a few episodes, I can't quite remember, or something like that, but the colors in here were not very vibrant at all, and even if it was just a neutral palette, I just did not think the quality was there. Like the shimmers just barely show up. I think Urban Decay has a lot of work to do with their color payoff and pigmentation. You know, maybe some people like that, but it's not for me, and this really could have been so much more for a She-Hulk palette. I would have liked to see some green mattes in here, some purple mattes in here, and just all around brighter colors. This was such a letdown. I was also quite let down from Too Faced this year. I will say I did try a couple of their palettes and they just are not doing it for me. So this little set they actually sent over and I tried it out. I was most disappointed with this palette here. Now usually their Christmas palettes, I know they're not usually good, so that's why I typically avoid them and I don't buy them, but they sent it, so I was like, let me try this out. This had like no pigmentation. The mint or the pinks just did not show up. It has the most chalky, dusty formula. It was not good at all. So this was a fail. I did try a couple other ones in the collection too. I think I tried this cookie one that was in this little bake shop set, and yeah, the formula, I mean, Too Faced, their normal tin formula is okay, but do not buy their holiday sets again. They're just not there. They used to have such a good formula for that time, but they have to compete with the other brands on the market now. For if they're gonna charge this much for their eyeshadows, they can't be putting out like drugstore quality, in my opinion. It just kind of seems like their formula has stayed the same for years and hasn't evolved. So yeah, they really have some work to do. Now, some of these palettes I don't have with me anymore because I have since decluttered, but speaking of Too Faced, the Two Femme palette, which I'll insert a picture here with the butterflies on it, that one, it was supposed to be a pastel palette, which I get it. Pastels are pretty light, but I shouldn't have to use a white base. I shouldn't have to build it up 500 times to get pigmentation out of it. The mints and the pinks in that one were just not great in my opinion. When I have a pastel palette, I still want it to perform and have a good quality, like the Natasha pastels. I feel like performed pretty nice, and I still expect the color to show up. It doesn't have to be dark. It can be pastel still, but it was like so light that I could barely tell anything was there. So I was pretty disappointed in their Two Femme palette this year as well. I also have a couple of Colourpop disappointments. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't include any Colourpop in my top 10, but my Colourpop favorites are actually going to be in my drugstore best of drugstore 2022 video. So I did include those in that video because there's definitely a few palettes from Colourpop that really knocked my socks off this year, but probably the two most disappointing ones I tried this year have to be from the Jasmine Chiswell collection, I think. She did like this almost Marilyn Monroe kind of theme, which she's a TikToker. She kind of looks like Marilyn Monroe, so she kind of dresses like her and stuff like that. So that's kind of the theming behind this. So this Hello Hollywood palette was honestly pretty bad, I will say. Not a lot of the palettes were bad I tried, but this one was bad. The shades were so light in pigmentation. I could hardly build anything up. The blue, again, it did not show up on the eyes. It was chalky, dusty, just not a good palette. It looked so bad. So that one was a complete fail. And then I was not too impressed with this one either, the Daisy Does It palette. I wanted a lot more from it because I was expecting this to be kind of a replacement for my Sunflower palette from Colourpop that was all mattes. But when I tried this out, the shimmers were pretty light, and just overall the formula and pigmentation again was pretty light, hard to show up, took a lot of building up, which I don't care for. I like my shadows pretty pigmented, so unfortunately it didn't work out. It didn't become what I wanted it to be, but I think I found some better ones this year from Colourpop for sure. A couple other ones I don't have with me anymore, but the Wet n Wild Care Bears palette, it was a cute idea and it was a cute collection, but I haven't been impressed with Wet n Wild's collabs. I just feel like those palettes, they're not up to what I expect from eyeshadows. Like, if you're gonna charge the same price as Colourpop, I expect the same quality as like Colourpop, which I know it's more affordable, but I still want a good performing eyeshadow. And Wet n Wild, I just really don't love their shimmer formula. I think they could improve it a little bit. I feel like they've had really good palettes in the past, but whatever palettes they're doing for their collabs lately, I just have never loved. And I've tried a few. I think I tried SpongeBob, the Care Bears, I think the little twin stars, and I have not been impressed. So I stopped buying those. Even though like I got really good views on those videos, it was just not worth it because every time I felt like I was disappointed. And I feel like they improved their mattes a little bit. Like, I got some bright, colorful looks out of it, but yeah, I just am not a fan of their shimmers. I thought they were really thick and chunky on the eyes. It's just not my favorite. And then I also wanted to talk about the Il Makiage Kathleen Lights collab. It's like disco something. I'll insert a photo here, but this was a pretty palette and I think it had potential, but I just did not think it was worth the price that they were asking for. I think I ended up paying like $80 something for it, and I was expecting like Natasha Denona quality for that price, you know, and it just was not there. The mattes were fine, a little bit light, took some building. The shimmers, I expected a little bit more punch to them. They were pretty sheer in my opinion, so I just really expected more for the price with that one. I wouldn't say it's a bad palette, but it definitely was not worth $80. And same goes for the Dior Khaki Neutrals palette that I tried this year. I loved the color scheme when I saw it, so it was like the first Dior palette that I purchased, and it was quite expensive. I brought it with me to Tennessee for my trip, and I used it a couple times and just kind of noticed that the shimmers in the palette were more of like a satin finish. So you guys know me, I love a metallic shimmer, and there's just not a good metallic shimmer in the palette. And the mattes were so light, I couldn't build anything in the outer corner because they were pretty much all crease colors in my opinion. So anyone with a darker skin tone than me is probably not going to make that work whatsoever. So that was another disappointment, and maybe I should have just looked into it more before buying. But like on the website, it looked like some of the shades were more matte and deeper, and then when I got it, it was just kind of like, oh, like I'm not really getting what I expected out of this again for the price. And I just think luxury palettes just don't seem to be for me, because I also am going to include Chanel quads on this video as well. I tried my first Chanel quad this year from their holiday collection, and like it was fine. I probably bought the better palette for the holiday ones that actually did have some pigmentation, but I just did not think it was a good formula, and definitely not worth the price tag for that, which I think I paid like $60 or so, $70 for that one. Like if those 4 shades had Kaleidos quality, I would be like, sure, like I'll pay the price, but it was not worth what I paid in my opinion. And I know some people were a little upset at me for that, because there is some lovers of luxury shadows, but I just personally don't think they're worth the money for what I'm looking for. And then lastly, for one of the worst palettes I tried this year, the Pixie and Hello Kitty collection. I was so excited for this one because I love Hello Kitty, and I thought it was so cute that Pixie was doing a collab with them. But typically I don't enjoy Pixie's shadow formula, and this one was just very bad, I will say. Definitely not one you want to pick up. It's called the Harmony Hues, and again, all of the shades are like satins or shimmers. There's no mattes in here. You can't even use these as a matte because they will get fallout all over. That happened to me when I tried to use the shade in my outer corner. It was not a good look. It looked like I had bruised my eye. So much fallout. The shadows are very dusty. It's just all shimmers, and even the shimmers are not that great in my opinion. So, you know, I had some hopes for this collection, and it was just really much more of a letdown. So Pixie shadows I'll probably not be purchasing in the future. I think they also need to kind of work on their eyeshadow formula a bit. I think that is everything I wanted to talk about in this video. We got some positives, we got some negative. If any of my worst palettes are ones that you love, please do not be offended. We may have totally different tastes in eyeshadows, and that is completely fine. Everyone is different. I have a certain preference, you guys have a certain preference, so our likes and dislikes may not match up. Let me know some of your best and worst palettes of the year as well. I'm super curious to know if any of these were also on your list. I'll have all my favorite ones linked down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.